In English.
Hi everyone, we are going to start, and it's really a pleasure now having here these two projects, Stronger Peripheries and BeSpectaACTive, in dialogue about the topic of change. Now we are diving into the concrete reality in which we can act the change inside the system. Both the two projects were animated by the desire of making a change and how cultural participation can change. Firstly, the way in which we act, the system in which we are, but how can we change the way artists can develop their project, how artists can work together with communities and beneficiaries, and how through cultural participation, active participation, and experimentation of new approaches of a way of involve actively citizenships and beneficiaries, we can change even our organization. I don't want to steal time to our two projects and leave the floor to the presentation, focusing on this topic of change. For BeSpectaACTive, we are at the end of 8-year journey. For Stronger Periphery, we are in the middle, but we can still start from what we wanted to change and why we wanted to change something, what achievement we succeeded to gain till now, and how we are fluctuating in these troubling times where so many things are happening in terms of crisis, political, economic, in terms of fiduciary and loyalty to the systems. And so, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Luisella. We will start by presenting both projects. Me and Clara will share the presentation of Stronger Peripheries, the Southern Coalition. As the Executive Director of Arte en Rede, I'm the coordinator, and Clara is the project manager. Stronger Peripheries is a large cooperation project. As you know, it's funded by Creative Europe program, and is operating from 2020 to 2004. And it's operating in the field of performing arts. It was created by 3 of the 14 partners of this current project. It was created in the framework of a manual on work and happiness, that it was another cooperation project coordinated by Arte en Rede. But it was also built on the connections and learning experience brought up by other 2 Creative Europe projects, as BeSpectaACTive and also Reshape, which, in which Arte en Rede participated as well. It is the first project of an informal network that we called Southern Coalition, that was created in 2017 and connects locally anchored cultural practices in a European South, aiming at overcoming isolation and boosting the skills of artists, cultural professionals, and audiences. So we are 14 organizations, 3 networks, Arte en Rede, Occitanie en Scène, and Transversal, 6 structures for creation, one festival, one artistic residency center, and 3 universities and one research center that is an associated partner. Kind of technique problem. So how do we created this network? We start to discuss about our common challenges, about the work that we do and the kind of obstacles that we face, and the methodologies, the practices that we created to overcome these obstacles. So we start to invite people for the conversation. We start 3 in the manual on work and happiness, and then we invite colleagues, other organizations that we find to have these common goals and common challenges. And then we discuss together, and we identified some important challenges that we wanted to overcome through a cooperation project. And these are some of the problems that we normally face. We have unstable cultural policy contexts. We operate in vulnerable ecosystems in which arts organizations cope with less funding, face bureaucratic obstacles, and are generally severely under-resourced for the work they carry out. We need professional training for the sector and capacity building schemes that enhance the sustainability of the sector. We have a lack of knowledge of our audience needs, which results in low audience numbers. Also, we see the funds for artistic production shrinking over the time. And we all have the sense of being peripheral, which means different things, of course. Because our country is a small economy, because of our geopolitical situation, or because we work in rural areas or in territories marked by strong inequalities. And to face these challenges, what do we want to change? What do we want to do in Stronger Peripheries? We want to question this notion of South and peripheries from a socio-political and socio-cultural point of view. We want to redefine our collective identities through culture, and better yet, through the empowering confluence of cultural difference. We'll analyze and change the existing imbalance of power in the field of production and artistic diffusion between North and South. Question also our current cultural policy models and if they are responding to the challenge faced by southern peripheries. And we need to empower cultural professionals and artists from the peripheral South to overcome these obstacles from working in fragile contexts. And so at the end of the projects, what we'll aim to change, what we will aim to achieve. We want to increase the knowledge, the competencies, the skills of cultural professionals working in Europe's peripheries. We want to increase the relational capital and networking capacities among partners organizations and among artists and cultural professionals. We want also to increase the cultural capital of the communities involved, to deepen the connections and increase the awareness of South-South collaborations potential. We did also a stronger reflexive discourse on different cultural policy models and their implications. And we want a recognition from local politicians of the importance of arts and their potential, the potential of participatory artistic projects. And we want to increase the level of inclusive cultural policies in the South. So, how we are going to do it?
Yes, first of all, there's been a change in the program for those of you following the print program, so it's me and not Carla who is here. Hi. So this is our how. And so our project is basically grounded in three main axes: collaborative artistic strategies that are done in collaboration, what we call tandem, between 2 or 3 partners; capacity building actions to respond to what Marta has just mentioned; and reflecting on cultural policies models. All these, of course, are intertwined, they are never independent, and they translate into several activities. In terms of collaborative artistic strategies, we will have 12 new co-productions emerging from this project, involving each of them 2 or 3 partners. On the capacity building, we'll have 21 workshops, seminars, and conferences, such as this one. There's another closing one right at the end. And 2 toolkits, which we will hopefully develop a bit further. On the cultural policies X, we will deliver 1 publication. Also, these conferences are part of the reflection and the platform where all results will be disseminated. Then, coming on to the artistic collaboration strategies and the tandem definition. Tandem is a collaborative strategy that gathers 2 or 3 actually partners or co-producers from different countries to commission a new artistic work within the performing arts field, which is grounded on participatory artistic practices and also based on a topic that must be interpreted locally, so it is anchored locally. And these processes, the research and the creative processes, are accompanied by a hosting community, a community of local residents. So how does a tandem develop? There are 2 countries involved. So at first, one of the national country where the artist is going to be located opens a call. We receive applications, and this selection process is pretty specific. It finalizes with a tandem workshop in which we get to know 5 shortlisted artists. I think we'll get through there. And in depth. So we spend a few days together getting to know one another. There are artist talks, there are debates and several formats to help us really understand this artist's profile better. It's not based on a project, but on a profile. Then there are 4 residencies, 2 research residencies and 2 creative residencies taking place, so one and the other in the different countries, research in country A and then research in country 2. So the artist gets to develop their work, enrouting it to these 2 local or 3 local contexts. And then there's a premiere, a presentation, and finally, hopefully, touring within the network. So this is our framework for a tandem, a co-production. On the hosting community, so this concept that I just spoke of, they are local ambassadors of our project. And it's an audience development strategy, but not only that, it's also a strategy of enrouting the artist to a context. So they are actively integrated into the creative process in many different ways. It is left open for the artist to decide, according to their to their project, what makes sense. They might be on stage or they might not be on stage. And it should fit both artists' needs and the organization's needs. And this community is supported by a connector, a person who mediates the relation between the co-producers, the artists, and the context. Yes, and we will generate on total 31 of these hosting communities throughout the project. We are done. This is our platform in case you want to visit. And thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Great. And now I would leave the floor to BeSpectaACTive.
Thank you. Maybe I need... In the meantime, Luca was changing the place. So, yeah, thank you again. It's super nice to be here and also presenting the projects together. So about BeSpectaACTive, we were already sharing a few words at the beginning. So as we already said, BeSpectaACTive is a large-scale cooperation project. We are at the end of the 2nd edition, so 8 years journey, as you were saying, Luisella, before. And yeah, BeSpectaACTive is focused on the performing arts. And basically, over the years, what we have done was to really experiment a multi-layer strategy of engagement, of audience engagement, citizens' engagement. So let's say that really this idea of participation was challenged constantly in different ways with different logic. Of course, at the center, as also you were saying before, it's fundamental, the partnership, because the partnership is the space and are the actors that conduct the experimentation. We cannot forget that a cultural cooperation process and a cultural cooperation project is an experimentation, and this space is the space in which we exercise our right to experiment democratic forms with all the failures and success which are fundamental. So in the course of our years of our work, as you can see, in the first journey we were, the project was counting on a number of 11, 12 partners in 9 European countries, while in the second edition we were really and significantly enlarging the partnership. And it's not only a matter of number, so nowadays we are 19 partners in 15 European countries, but it's also the variety of scales and also the variety of context and languages on which the different partners were focused and are still focused likely. So research centers, universities, organizations focused on the Novo Cirque, international festivals, in theaters, dance, platforms, student centers. So they were all really networks. They were all really an important part, an active part in all the different experimentations that we were conducting, together with also municipalities. So in a way, we were really have experience and experiment and different approaches to this idea of cultural creation, engagement at the different levels of our way of working, and then also in the way also policies and ideas were developed. So let's say that here you have the list of the partners, that most of them are here, so thank you for being here again and for being such a strong and important part of this project. And maybe one level more that would be interesting to share here about the partnership, that in each of the cases, some partners more, other less, we were also trying to create connections and strong connections with the local territories, creating also local networks that were enriching also the dynamics of experimentation in the different contexts. So let's say that there are the co that were at the base of our journey. So the way of co-programming, of which Luca will give you more insights later. So meaning to collaborate together with the citizens in the cultural programs or in the artistic programs in the different artistic venues. The co-producing, so co-produce among the partners new performances through a very extensive process of residency. Co-creating, so connecting citizens, artists, people in the different venues for inventing forms, for discussing urgent topics that were felt as needed in that specific moment, and of course co-commissioning. So putting the communities and the local communities of citizens together for enriching and enlarging some specific aspects. And then finally co-managing. That was a tricky space in which we were involving people also in the way the governance system was created. So let's say that one of the key words that during the years arisen in our exploration was this notion of translocal. Translocal has been used in several arenas, comes from geopolitical studies and so on. For us, this means really to connect people and to connect people beyond frontiers, beyond borders. So in a way, and this is also what a cooperation project generally does, connect people that are based in so different spaces, and also in a way beyond the cultural limitations. So in a way, for following what was saying this morning, valorizing cultures and the differences, and then also play the game with cultural clashes, which are an element part of a cooperation process. So during the conferences that we have realized across Europe in these last years, it was mentioned that for performing in this kind of spaces, we need to act locally, to navigate globally, and to orientate locally. In a way, it seems a kind of old-fashioned expression because it was more linked to the past, but in a way, it's still maybe a way through which we can tackle our local territories and also for rereading the different spaces. So for concluding this part, let's say that for us was very important to set a kind of empirical methodology. And for that reason, over the years, empirically, we have defined BeSpectaACTive and the network as peer learning network, individuating a figure, a professional figure, fundamental for creating this kind of translocal connection, so the community manager, fostering qualitative internal evaluations while we were making things. And this was also possible because of the action research process. So let's say connecting research, practice, citizens, and all our different skills together, experimenting. So few numbers here, just for sharing numbers which say something but not say all the story that we have run. So Luca.
This is mine.
So just few more details about
I would like to speak with you specifically about this idea of co-programming and also about the role of the artist into this project. In general, what we ask to each one of the partners is to create a group of active spectators in every city, giving them a real power of choosing something for the programming of the different theaters and festivals that are part of the network. But of course, this is not the final goal. The final goal is to create a community around art and to ask to people to sit on the table where cultural decisions are taken. I mean, ask to normal people, if I can use this word, not expert, not professional people, and giving them the real power of make a difference in the cultural choices. So, of course, it's a risky project, it's a risky process, and sometimes there were also internal resistance into the network because, of course, all of us, we are trained for being expert, for knowing tendencies and trends and what is the quality in artistic production. And so to give this opportunity to people without this training, it could be sometimes also populistic if you want. But the idea is not, okay, you can vote as if we were in a talent show on the TV. The idea is we are doing a process together. We are creating an horizontal and democratic assembly in which your thoughts, your feedbacks, your ideas are taken in account and you can make a choice together with the others. On the side of the artists, there were other resistance, of course, at this process because, of course, our idea, if you want, for me, it's an old-fashioned idea, but is that the artist is a genius able to understand the situation of the society and to create something that can impress us as spectators. But the idea is, at the base of this project, is how can change if you can create your vision together with citizens. What is changing is if you accept to be really influenced by them and to be open to change your mind also on that. And so we promoted a deep and truly idea of participation, not simply because I need 20 people on stage to do something, but because, and many times we were not asking to these people to be part of the shows. They remain audience many times. Sometimes they were also on stage. But the central idea is they have some thoughts, they have some feelings, they are intelligent enough for giving to you as artists a vision that can change your process. So here you can see some of the 19 production we realized during these last 4 years. Of course, I cannot enter in all of them, but as you can see, all the artists, they were touching some topics that are in the center of the political and social discussion, because of course participation needs to be based on concrete and real topics of our everyday life. And I think one of the interesting results of this process is also to change the way in which some of these artists are now thinking their way of creating, and some of them, they are continuing to engage people during their creative processes. We did that thanks to also a process of creative residency, so each artist had 4 periods of work in different cities, but now we don't have time to go so in the specificity. Another idea of the project was also to put together 2 communities and to ask to them to commissionate to an artist a piece of art to be realized in the 2 cities, asking to the 2 communities to commission this piece of art. And also, one of the problem of this process was how we can gather together all these people that are living in different cities, because of course it was impossible to bring them all together here because it would be too expensive. And so we had this idea to create these days, the European Spectators Day, in which we try to find different ways to gather together during 1 year per time. And as Juliana was saying, there is also a scientific perspective in the process, and the Conference of Lisbona is the ending point, because tomorrow we will also present one of the book, the 4th book, produced in the framework of BeSpectaACTive. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this presentation, but even for tackling and jumping into the topic of change and how you act to make this change concrete, how you deal with specific initial ambition, initially set and shared, and how you act to make this concrete. And because you already given to us some taste of your concrete activity, I would ask you to jump directly into the way you navigated this complexity. So how have the original assumption been affected by the context and the relation with the context, with the cultural and artistic practices, and with the research and the achievement that the research was giving to you during the process. So how you tackled with this, and how have you been affected by all these elements during the development of the project and of the process?
Okay, as one of the dimensions of the project that we decided together when we were building the application, we were talking together between all the organizations, the partners, about this common challenge that I told you about. And then we start to put this in some ideas, abstract and concrete ideas. So poetic ideas that we identify as topics that we are going to address during the project. They are not really themes. They are things that we understand that are urgent to address in our local contexts, in our southern peripheries, and that we want to address through all the projects, through artistic productions, through the conferences, the capacity building initiatives, through the publication, and we will address it, but not in a positive way, but leave it as a tool for dialogue, for the dialogue with the local contexts and with the local communities. For instance, we have these 6 topics, and one is having a voice, that is the title of the conference, but it's also a title of 2 artistic productions. And during the process of dialoguing with the partners and with the artists about what means having a voice, we invited people to address this in different perspectives. to talk about having a voice in the perspective of gender, of race, of climate justice. So this can be food for thought for the artists and for the partners, but also to leave space to interpret this in the local context with the local communities, because they are open topics that everyone can connect independently of where we live, what we do, what's our cultural capital, and so on. So I will just say about it's having a voice, but also daily bread, work and happiness, connecting dots right to the future and bridging the gap. So these common ideas. Also, one other characteristic of the project is that, and it's connected to what I just said, is that the artists, they are not, when we invite the artists to develop a production in the context of Stronger Peripheries, they are not presenting a project. They are presenting themselves, their ideas, their works, and we leave space for the project to be built in a direct dialogue with the local communities and the local contexts during the work.
I think I will jump to our second question. There's something to be said about that, and we are then for our final one, so thank you. When facing specific contexts, and as you already noticed, Marta mentioned the word context a lot of times, because it is really an important thing of these creative processes. We face many different scenarios and many different ways of envisioning what a selection process means, how the artists are sensitive to relations with co-producers. And so the first thing it came across as very clear was that we had to tailor our framework of a selection process to specific contexts. And that means that in some cases the selection is done before and then we just meet the artists, and in some cases we keep it as we had planned, that we make a selection after being together. So even though we write it on paper, when we deal with such different contexts as 10 countries, we need to be flexible enough and adjust to different scenarios. And one thing to be said also is that even though it was not on paper, we were not expecting artists to engage in meaningful relations between them, but it's happening. So they're inviting one another to join their creations, and these are unexpected results that are part of what it means to offer people time to be together. So these things happen independently of what we thought. Others feel engaged enough to come across as ambassadors of the project, and then suddenly they are bringing our name to other countries and situations and letting us know about it afterwards, which is also a surprising result. And just to mention a final thing, it's not easy to fit this project framework to the context and this idea of what a connector means, what a hosting community is, which might be many different things. So we need to be really flexible and carefully listening to what the artistic project is having us do. And so this is a key word, I would say, flexibility, and another key word, meaningful human relations, for these two ideas.
Thank you, because you both tackle many different aspects, starting from this notion of flexibility, adaptability, and listen what the context needs, what the context desire, and be open to unexpected, which can give an added value to what we are doing in relation to the contribution that artists can give to the project, and can open up new scenarios to relate with the context. I think that these elements are really meaningful and can be maybe shared even in BeSpectaACTive, but I leave the floor to Giuliana and Luca.
Yeah, thank you, Lisella. Yes, in a way, looking from the eyes of this long experience, for sure, for allowing a transformation and embracing the change, It means also what we discover over the years to give time and to have space and to have money, which are, the three main buzzwords that are running in our age, especially in the cultural field, because we don't have time, we don't have never enough money for doing what we would like to do, and often we don't have a space. So this is the reason why a cooperation project is always a great achievement, because it gives this kind of dimension. And what we have learned in a way over these years is that to settle a methodology, an empirical methodology that comes while you are doing, is it's a fundamental key, because it also can give you the instruments for allowing this cultural clash, which is also quite fundamental. I remember when we started working on the selection of the artists in the frame of the project, that were really different perspectives that were meeting each other. Some of them were on the same ground, others were really completely different. And this is something that is fundamental, because it's a learning process for the partners. It's a learning process that also take alive then in the context in which you perform, and is also a way for transforming your organization and the way in which you act into the context. So this is the reason why for us, for example, to placing the community managers in each of the different venues was so important, because it was a way for arriving and for having an entry point into a context for the artists, between the communities, for all of us, for learning more, and then also for elaborating a kind of common vocabulary, because again, we speak about participation, but what does it mean? There are several ways in which we use participation, and also there are several ways in which participation is used for democratic assessments. So we can speak about participatory democracy, maybe yes, maybe not. We can speak about representative democracy, maybe yes, maybe not. So this process was really, in a way, fundamental, and conflict is part of it. And this is what we learned, no? Luca?
Yeah, for me, the main achievement about change that we reached in these 4 and plus 4 years was to take seriously what Marcia Tiburi was saying before, that culture is the production of a way to participate together. And if you want to do that really, it takes a completely change of mindset in all of us, in the organizations, because you have to leave some power to others. You cannot maintain all your power if you want really to share with your audience, with your artist, a process. Because participation probably is, what we discover is that participation probably is the longest way to do the same, or to do something different, of course, at the end. But the way is longest. It takes more time. If I can do my program by myself, it's easier. I know a lot of artists, a lot of projects that are presented to me. But if I want to share this idea with my community, with my context, with my territories, with my audience, with our spectators, it takes a lot of time. It changes completely also the way of working of all our structure. I cannot leave that on a specific department of my structure. Okay, you can take care of our audience, do something with them, give to them some conference, some meeting with artists. Participation is something that needs to change the full organizations. So I don't know if all our partners will change their way of organizing, but for sure BeSpectaACTive put in all our minds the seed of change on this. Take the longest way, because the results are giving you a bigger sense of belonging on what you are doing.
Thank you, Evan, because you introduced this notion of time and the need of time, the need to be flexible in timing, but even to allow the cultural clash, and so to make this transformative approach organic inside the community, inside the context, inside the organization, inside the artist way of working. But to me now there is a new question arising in terms of legacy. So how can we overcome this logic, this project logic, and what can we leave? What is the legacy of our activities, of our project, of our efforts, of our way of working side by side, peer to peer, with different kind of citizen, artists, cultural operators, and so on? I know it's a huge and big question, but let's try.
But I think we can all see the legacy that we already have here, because this project, Stronger Peripheries, was born upon the legacy of BeSpectaACTive, of Reshape, of Manual on Work and Happiness. So we learned a lot in these projects, and we take this experience, these learnings, to build another project, to continue the work that we are already doing with the community. So we start with Manual on Work and Happiness, and that means BeSpectaACTive, with all these work with communities, participatory artistic practices, with the community manager, and we took this to Stronger Peripheries. For instance, we have also this idea of the connector, which is related to the idea of community manager. This is already a big legacy. And also in this project, we started the project from the idea that we will be a network. So we will not finish the work after the 4 years project. So this is the first project of Southern Coalition, and we start discussing the network, the goals, the enlargement also of the work, the network, what we want to achieve, how we are going to operate. We are going to invite to be part of the conversation. What kind of methodologies also we want to experiment, to apply. So this idea of legacy is very important for us, but because we need to also make all these connections between the work that we do and not just finish something and initiate something completely different.
So passing the testimony and keeping the conversation alive, even outside the formality of the project. So this kind of tam-tam or waterfall approach, which I use a bad word, contaminate, but in a positive way, all our surrounding, our context, professional context, but not only professional context. This way to make things always on the mic, we can say.
Yeah, and just to add on this also, what I mentioned before on meaningful relationships, it also happens between us partners. So this naturally leads to partners inviting partners to join other projects. So there is kind of a, as you said, a waterfall or domino effect, positive domino effect of these projects. But to mention 3 very specific things that are possibly legacies of this project. One is the specific selection process that I mentioned before. It is something specific, even though it's not completely innovative, but we are testing it 12 times and finding new things every step of the way. And some of us are also leading these ideas to other projects. And then the toolkits, there are 2 toolkits. One that analyzes our audiences, the other one, the quality in participatory practices, participatory processes. And these 2 toolkits that are being applied throughout the project will then be made available for everyone to use through our platform, which is also a legacy. And finally, a publication. We know that it's a normal output of these European projects, but we are really trying to make it relevant not only for those who accompany the project, but also for the cultural sector at large and the academia. Trying to assess in a critical perspective what we are doing and the different methodologies of participation that are being developed and approached throughout the project.
So yeah, the question about legacy, it's really tricky and fundamental, I would say, when we speak about cultural cooperation. So of course, I think to settle and to, as you also were saying, no, to settle and to, in a way, formalize the methodologies that come from all this experimentation are fundamental, because it's a way really for passing the testimony, as you were saying, between projects, and also for understanding how these things are changing. And of course, this is something that is also, that becomes part of each organization, of each context that was experiencing, also some methodologies that were used. But about legacy, I would also highlight how much is important for all of us, for all the cooperation projects, to, in a way, be connected and ask for having a legacy of all the knowledge that is produced. Because if we look at ourselves, and how many projects each of us represent, or how many networks we are representing, and so on. And even in a single European project, there are, each partner is representing not only his institution, but also maybe other networks, other connections, and so on. So maybe this is an open question mark in which we really have now to think seriously how to spread this knowledge, and also to give a second life to this knowledge for the community, which is not only European. And maybe this is also, a democratic matter. So it's a point that I would like to share with all of you, for maybe thinking together for a future beyond a project-based logic, which it doesn't work anymore, as we know.
Thank you, Juliana. Just a short notes. I like very much when you were speaking about giving a legacy in terms of sharing the methodology, but keeping the methodology alive. So a kind of open approach to our methodology that can be enriched even by others, to make all our legacy alive and not just written on the paper, but written on the paper and re-questioned and re-put in act. So in a way it can be always live and be questioned by everyone. So I think that this open approach can be very useful, even in terms of legacy, for who is going to take the testimony with us, or is going to proceed in the journey with us. Sorry.
Yeah, shortly, first of all, connected to that, let me say thank you to Marta for what she said, because yes, I'm really proud if someone is saying to you that it was inspired by the work you were doing. It's really touching, so thank you. And on the perspective of the internal perspective of the organization, I already answered, I think, in the previous question. My other two thoughts are, the first one is that participation is much more central now in the artistical visions than 8 years before. Of course, it's not only our results, of course. As Bob Dylan was saying, the answer is blowing in the wind, of course. But anyway, I want to think that also us, we did our part for that. Now art is much more participative than 10 years ago. And in my case, I receive much more projects in which the artists are asking me to create something with my community, with my local contacts, in a site-specific way, in a community-based way. So I think if we are able, all together with our everyday work, to give to the artists this new opportunity to create in a more collective way, we are creating a real change, and we are expressing the real legacy of what we are doing. And the second thought is about an email that I received from one of our partners from Serbia, from Zmaja. And we tried to apply again to the Creative Europe. We didn't win, but we will try again another time, not 20 times, another one. And Zmaja wrote me, Oh, I'm really touching because this is not one of the one of the project. For me, it's something special, and for me, it's difficult to say that we didn't win again to my young board of active spectators that are doing this UPAD festival in Novi Sad. And what I hope is that one of the legacy of our project is to maintain alive this 50 group of active spectators we created in all our cities, because this is possible to be done, and I'm speaking with all our partners. Of course, if there will be another BeSpectaACTive, we can do that in a better way, but I think it's possible to continue this active process in every city with your spectators, and I hope it will happen.
I think that this invitation or this hope, which seems to be really concrete, can be the right way to close this discussion. I would love just to give some keywords that touched me and that are shared and are in common. So don't be afraid about our vulnerability, but sometimes make this visible and shared, and it can be our strong point of our strength to be shared together with artists, together with our community. Be aware that a peer learning approach can be a win-win approach and can feed everyone and can nourish everyone and can help us in changing our perspective and having this change in mindset, which all we are calling, but now which is in act. Another thing is taking care of what we are doing and give passion and emotion to what we are doing, because at this table today I see this in a tangible and concrete way. And don't be scared about the unexpected, because unexpected can happen, and it is this missing middle that can make us smile and can make us be joyful about our work and more passionate, and be able to touch the others and keep the conversation alive with the other and open a very, sorry for the repetition, open dialogue based on listening not just the needs of people, but the desire to create maybe a different future for us. And let's fight to make this future concrete in our situation, in our context every day, acting every day, and not lose our hope, but make this hope our final goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to change to Portuguese for the housekeeping notes that don't need to be live streamed. Então, só para explicar brevemente